Konnichiwa. Hey girl. Hey guy. Welcome to Now Let's Get Chatty. We are so glad that you tuned in today. Have you ever felt like you held like a grudge or something for someone, towards someone before? Or you had like a little anger towards them when they came in the room? Hater. We're gonna chip away at what that possibly could be. Yeah. It's one word. What's that word?
Unforgiveness.
Unforgiveness. So what are the faces of unforgiveness? What does unforgiveness look like? How do you know you kind of deal with it? Like, when do you let go? Like, when do you kind of let go and forgive someone for an offense?
Right.
So one way I feel like you know that you've still been offended is the blame game. It's kind of like almost like a rivalry, maybe.
You said that's one way you know you've been offended?
That you have some unforgiveness. It's like blame.
You trying to find out whose fault it was?
It's more like, well, she did that. She did that. It's their fault. It's they. I'm like this because they did that. They did that to me. They. And I think you hear that. I'm not gonna say a lot, but sometimes it's hard to accept our role in a situation. And let's just narrow it down. Let's just be a little more specific. Let's kind of close this box in a little bit. Because we are siblings.
Okay.
And what about like unforgiveness with like sibling rivalry? How y'all feel about that? Like, when do you let go? Like, hey, this happened when we was 5, like, and we 60 years old now. Like, when do you let go of offense?
I think people mature at different levels, and man, that's a big question.
It is.
So if the person doesn't choose to change, you have to just make the decision that you're just gonna let it go instead of holding on to it and being a prisoner to that hurt or misunderstanding.
And when you're young, things happen when you're young too, and so I feel like as you grow older, you understand each other more. So you know the person's personality better, so you're able to let go. So you'll know that, hey, this person most likely didn't mean harm.
Right.
So,
or they didn't even know that they had offended you,
right,
or that they were in error.
But that's good to also address things and to have an open line of communication that I can say, hey, you said something, I know you probably was, a smart comment or whatever, but that didn't fly too well. And also to know that you don't have to respond negatively either.
What do you mean you don't have to respond negatively?
So if you said something to me and I was offended, I don't have to give you a smart comment. I don't have to tell you off. Like, you don't always have to have a comeback for something. It's easier to pause, address it.
Because that comeback could create an offense.
And it's easy to say, say what a person should do.
Yeah.
Because let you get in the right situation. How will you respond?
Yeah.
So it's easy to say what a person should do. That may not be a situation that you will respond to. But if you're in another situation and you like, that's a sensitive area for you, you may respond the way you shouldn't respond.
Yeah. So each person has their own thing.
So you should just be accountable for what you do. You can't really control a person's. You can't control a person, so you have to be accountable for what you do.
And just in that moment, I had said sometimes that response can create an offense. Because if you know this person's like, what you doing? Get. Why are you in my picture, baby. Sit down. You got to, oh, your hair is so. And they, you know, they knocking you, and you can turn around and be like, you know what? Y'all can go right at it, right there. But if nobody stands down, and then if you go at it, let me go back. So if you go at it, you begin to create something.
Yeah,
I've heard numerous stories where people who are related or friends were at a house arguing. That argument escalated and somebody lost their life. I mean, you have to respond. I feel like if you know that person is somebody who's always on 10, you have to respond, I feel like, according to that. And then if you're that person who's always on 10, you don't always have to go be combative, argumentative. You don't always have to win. You don't have to have the last say. You don't have to have the upper hand.
And I think also, even with siblings, since we mentioned siblings, that it's good to understand that there's different personalities. We all can't be the same. We all can't respond, talk the same. We all can't
Our response
be
is
like
different.
Becky's.
Ooh, this is an off question.
What's the question?
So what is a personality trait that you feel like you ladies feel like I have that's difficult for you all to deal with?
What's that? What?
Personality trait that I have that you ladies feel like it's hard to deal with.
I prefer not to talk about that. You can. Dolores.
I don't even know.
Is there an area? So you know what? That's kind of off topic. Since we're on, is there something that I've done that you feel like, you know, I feel like you haven't forgiven me for this, or I haven't forgiven you for that? Do we have any some alts against each other and we don't know about?
Yes. When I was 3, and I just learned to walk. And I came through the door, and you didn't see me, and he slammed the door on me. I just never been able to get over that.
I think there's you said something right there. I've known people who've been offended and
They
held
hold on to
grudges
it forever.
because you walk in a room and you don't speak to them.
That means they want to be acknowledged.
But is it worth holding, like being mad? And
Well, I don't know why you would be mad and someone doesn't acknowledge you. I don't understand why you would be mad.
But that's
I think differently than other people because, well, okay, so say you go to someone's house. You speak to one person, but you don't speak to the other person.
No.
Like you acknowledge one of the persons in the house, but you don't say nothing to the other person.
That's why you
That kind of stuff I feel like maybe that could possibly be deliberate.
Yeah, I agree.
Then I think that in that way, I feel like that could possibly very well be deliberation. And then, what is the general hello? Hello, everybody. But see, everybody is okay. So I noticed that, like, when we were growing up, I was having a conversation with someone. I was like, you know, when we were growing up, and then for sure, us two, the ones that are closer in age, our mother was not a very outgoing individual, which she would probably be called maybe shy individual. Yeah. Yes.
And that's how we grew up, you know. So it wasn't like common for us to like go in the room and be, hey everybody, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? We would just creep in the little room and just be like and sit down and just be quiet.
We'd be quiet.
So, and when you think of it culturally, not everybody in every culture is like that.
Right.
So that's how we grew up. And as I started getting older, you know, people started telling me, you know, those that were more comfortable with speaking to everybody in the room. It was like, hey, you should speak to people. And you're just like, but why? Because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to speak to people.
It's a polite thing to do.
Well, it's a polite thing to do.
So is there like a reasonable amount of time that will be healthy, quote unquote healthy, to hold on to something? Or should you not hold on to anything at all and address it immediately? Or can you hold on to this for maybe a couple of days, marinate in your heart or whatever?
Raise
For
my
some
hand on
that want to
that.
be angry, right? And if you want to hold those feelings and then release it.
I want to raise my hand on that, because I think at the moment it begins to give you a headache, cause you not to be able to sleep, cause you to feel some type of way when you see their face, hear their name, or hear someone talk about them. If you start to feel some kind of way and it bothers you, stop in that moment, address it. Because I'm not gonna say what will happen, because if you let it fester and you let it build up, you'll find yourself, it'll go from unforgiveness to bitterness, jealousy, it'll start to hatred. You have to stop it in its tracks, and that's the way I feel like you can hit it straight on. I know, hit it straight on. I feel like you just stop it once it begins to affect how you sleep, how you think. You need to say, hey, you know what? This is bothering me. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. So say you are offended and you go to sleep and you're that's on your mind or that's in your heart, and you go to sleep and you wake up and it's in your mind, it's on your heart, and then it goes into the next day, and then you still don't talk about it. It goes into the next day, and that type of stuff, that type of stress and feeling, it will begin to affect your body. There are physical negative aspects to that action.
Right.
Ooh, that's good.
And it makes me think of like when a person holds on to something, they even have some of the same effects of having unforgiveness. When you're keeping some information, they begin to have physical problems because they're holding on to something and not when it's supposed to be said. But this makes me think about something that I was thinking about on my way here, and that is how one person can give their point of view of the picture. You know, this happens in the picture. That's what they see. Yeah. And then you ask the other person, this is this is what they see. Yeah. And then you open up the whole picture, and then you see the whole picture for what it is.
Oh, yeah.
But when you are dealing with unforgiveness, okay, so you want to forgive someone, you know, you desire to forgive someone, and you do forgive someone, and say for instance they act as if they don't really care. Well, forgiving someone is an action that benefits you.
Yes, for yourself.
So to hold on to it is something that you release. You're like, you know what? I'm letting it go.
That's good.
Even if that person doesn't change. And then too, you have to make the decision if that person is in your life. And I was also thinking about this. Thinking about how a plant, because I've had this aloe vera plant that my mom gave me for my birthday in my window. And the plant fell, and some of the soil fell out of the plant. And so it's been kind of struggling. I think about it, I need to get some soil, but it recently happened. So it doesn't have as much soil as it normally has, and it had been thriving because it had the soil, and I would give it water. So it hasn't been having as much soil, and so I've been noticing that the plant is kind of like dying around the edges. And so it made me think of the importance of feeding into something that is necessary for it to grow. So you're giving it water, you're giving it sun, right? But if this, say for instance, that plant represents a relationship.
Come on.
You're giving the relationship what it needs to grow. You're giving the relationship what it needs to sustain.
Yes.
But if it's a relationship that needs to be cut off, you have to yank that thing up or cut that thing off, right? But that doesn't mean, I can't forgive this person. You have to forgive.
Yeah, you do.
But you choose to not continue on the relationship.
Ooh, what do y'all think about people who make that statement that says you can forgive, or I can forgive, but I'll never forget?
Yeah.
So does that walk hand in hand, like forgetting and forgiveness?
I think so.
Like, what percent should you forget? Like, it's not even a percent.
I call it situational, because like, say for instance, you do forgive someone, and then something comes up and you forgive them. Something comes up and you forgive them. You're like, whoa. Hey, how about we just tell each other everything? How about we put it all out there so that when we forgive, we can move on. You know, we don't have to keep going back and forth. How about we just put it all out there, tell each other how we feel about each other. You know, you done done me this way. You done done me this way. Let's put it all out there so that when we forgive each other, we can move on.
What were you about to say?
I forgot.
What you just said, Lillian, made me think about when I was younger, made me think of relationships. I was younger, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, I was the person who was always cheating. And what would happen is I'd get caught, and I knew there was other stuff, but in consideration of that person's feelings,
you wouldn't tell it all.
I would not tell it all. Because I was like, if I tell it all, it's just gonna hurt them more. And I knew it was a whole bunch of stuff. So what do y'all think about I don't even know what you think about that. So can you, I think that made me just think about that. Like when you begin to consider someone's feelings, holding information with
a lie. In my book, a lie is a lie. A lie is a lie.
Deception. Disgrace.
And if you can't be honest, then I can't fully forgive you.
Yeah,
well,
but talking about what Lillian was mentioning, it makes me think of I know Lillian likes to say, there's a scripture, there's
Proverbs.
Proverbs. That's not me.
That's
yeah. So I know it talks about when you have an ought against your brother, to come to them. And I feel like when you have an ought, it's easy to tell between two people. Some people say, oh, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. But if you really pay attention to people and how they feel and their emotions and how they respond and how they move and act and change or whatever, you know that something has happened that like it's something's different. So I feel like regardless if you were the one that regardless if you cause something in the person to have unforgiveness or vice versa, and even if you feel like it's nothing, you should have the guts to come to someone and say, hey, what's wrong? I know that this is different. Is there something we need to address? You know what? And if I did offend you, or even if going back on just maybe some things, like it may not have been the specific thing that caused unforgiveness in them, but hey, you know what, that time this, you know what, I'm so sorry, I really didn't mean whatever. Like, please forgive me. Just opening the door so the person can see that, hey, I don't want you to have this feeling towards me or to have this between us. And I think if a lot of people did that, things will be way better.
We're passing out today, you guys, we're passing out forgiveness pills. Remedies that you can take to move towards forgiveness. And one thing you have to move past, what is the word? Oh, it starts with the P. Punishment. You know, when you get mad at someone, you want to punish them by, I'm not going to call them. My children aren't going over there. Or we're not going to their birthday party. You start to punish them. Or if you're in a relationship, you lock it down, you like really Medea said, clink, clink.
You punish yourself.
And what happens, you begin to create a wedge. And
because you create this, you're creating this tension. You're creating this situation, or you're feeding into that situation when you go to that extent.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And back to what you said about your aloe vera plant. You have to put the soil where you feel in a relationship where you feel it needs to be nurtured and it can grow. But if you find yourself, okay, I've forgiven this individual, but they keep doing the same old, they keep offending me, or they keep hurting my feelings, or they keep slapping mud. I love to use mud, throwing mud in my face. You have to say, this is who they are, and I'm going to be and love that person possibly at a distance, and guard your heart. You know, you can't just, it's just not open for people to just punch it. You gotta guard your heart, and no one's in control of your body but you. Granted that we're talking to people who are, above 15 and up. No one's in charge of your body but you, because you have placement. You have the power of placement. You decide kind of where you go and who surrounds you. And so if you find yourself constantly surrounded by someone who offended you and y'all never deal with it, you'll always be frustrated, and that frustration will spill off to other people who are surrounding you, and you find yourself snapping on Tom and Harry when it's actually Jack's fault.
Everybody.
Yeah. So I think the moment things begin to bother you, deal with it. Go to that person and say, we need to, can we talk? If they're like, child, wait, I'm not talking, I ain't got no time to talk. Or, hey, my schedule's so busy and they never fit you in. You probably have to send a text message, an email, get it off of you.
Yeah.
Get it off of you. By any means necessary. Text, write a letter in the mail, as long as it's not on social media.
Yeah, and I would say, and even if you can't do that, prayer is communication where you're also able to let things go. And forgiveness is not for them, but it's for you. So regardless, if you're able to get the opportunity to have the conversation, regardless, forgive, move on, move past it, let it roll on over.
Yeah. So we'd like to know
Now let's get chatty.
Bye.
We love you.
Take that forgiveness pill.